Hi everyone, this is Greg Hunt. I'm a mediator, a trainer, and host of No Disputing That, the podcast for anyone with an interest in dispute resolution. In this series, I sit down with some of the leading names in the dispute resolution field to discuss mediation, arbitration, and other forms of alternative dispute resolution, which we also call ADR. We may even cover other issues in the law and in life in general. Expect some laughs, some honesty, and quite a few editing errors along the way. Welcome back. Today I'm with Anne Scott. Anne joined the Federation of Small Businesses, or FSB, as Development Manager at the start of September. That was 2022, after a 20-year career spanning the criminal justice system. Anne's first role in the criminal justice system, interestingly, was in a prison dishing out canteen orders. So she's done lots of various things, which I'm sure she can elucidate on as we go through. Most recently, Anne was an account director for a local PR agency, and this experience has been helpful as a large part of a current role at the FSB is spent raising the profile of the FSB, so small businesses know what support's on offer to them. Anne's experience includes communications, marketing, social media, volunteer support, fundraising, policy development, events, and dishing out canteen orders. Like me, Anne's lived in Essex for 20 odd years and feels privileged to call it home. She's originally from Wales, which is where I spent a lot of my childhood, particularly in the summer. And I used to love looking at the Welsh mountains from in Anne's house in Liverpool. Anne's seen firsthand the devastating impact that triple shock of Brexit, COVID, and the war in Ukraine has had. Now, not only are small firms facing the increased cost of doing business, but their owners are facing their own cost of living crisis too. Tell me about it. As we're recording this, I am sitting in my office, freezing cold. The small business community is the beating heart of our economy. I've been a member of the FSB now for 6.5 years. It was one of the very first things I did when I set up my own business. I had my own reasons for that at the time, and they've not changed greatly since then. And Anne might want to find out what they are later. I think Anne chose to work for the FSB as she's seen the tangible difference the organisation has already made to the small businesses owned by her own family and friends. And she believes that the FSB is in a strong position to help support small businesses. Anne, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for this opportunity, Greg. Really happy to be here.
No problem at all. It's good to. You're actually the first lady on the podcast.
I'm privileged. Thank you.
Yeah. And you're the first person who doesn't come from a background in mediation, arbitration, ADR as well. So you're our first outsider as sorts on the show too. So no pressure on either of them. Potentially you're the first person who's not English as well.
See, technically I am English. I was born in England. I was born in Portsmouth and migrated to Wales when I was very young. Very young indeed. I actually had to learn Welsh in primary school.
Really? God.
I can't remember a single word of Welsh now, only the words that I can't repeat on this podcast.
So in the World Cup, are you if you're watching it and if you care, are you supporting Wales or England?
No, I'm torn because obviously I am English, but I grew up and I owe a lot of my identity to Wales, but I don't actually watch football. I'm more of a Formula One fan, I must
All right, yeah. That Formula One sort of passed me by, but my kids enjoy it. So I do see it and I understand it because the kids watch it more than myself. But yeah, I love Wales personally. I grew up in the northwest of England, and I reckon probably from the age of 0 till 10 or 11, we spent every summer in a caravan in Rhyl. And it was some great memories of the beaches of particularly North Wales, I must admit. But going into Mid Wales, going down to the south occasionally as well, it was very good memories as a child. We used to watch S4C as well, believe it or not. We used to be able to
I do remember that. And
Oh,
Pobblacombe, the
yeah,
Welsh
yeah,
version of Coronation Street.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I've got really fond memories of growing up in Wales. I actually grew up in a really small village called Llanydden, which is at the base of Lake Fenwy.
Mm.
You must Google it actually, because it's got an incredible history. It was basically a village that was flooded in the late 1870s to make way for a reservoir.
Mm.
And actually, that reservoir today supplies the water to Liverpool, which you've also just mentioned.
Yeah.
So incredibly beautiful. There's a lot of small businesses actually that operate in that area. And I worked for a small business in the area in a little cafe. But I never appreciated it when I lived in Wales. It's only when I go back home and I see how beautiful and peaceful it is that I realise how lucky I was. You know, growing up, to me, there was one bus a day into town, and my fun was sitting in the bus shelter drinking cider because there was nothing else to do.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm very fortunate to have grown up in Wales and lucky I can still go back home.
Yeah. Essex isn't bad though, is it?
No, Essex is beautiful and it is so vibrant. You know, you've got very rural communities, you've got the seaside communities, you've got the cities. In fact, Colchester today was made a city.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
we've got lots of really dynamic towns and cities in our county, and I feel very lucky to be working with and for the small businesses across Essex, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can see I live in Billericay, and just talking to local business people on the high street, and other businesses around town, the diversity is amazing. And for someone like me, who I'm not from this part of the world, but I've lived here since the mid 90s. But I always worked in London, so I was very conversant with what was going on in the city and what was going on in the law firms and the big financial services companies and things like that. But I was never really that aware of what was going on my doorstep, and the range of businesses that you get locally, and how actually quite a few of them are really, really impressive, and they're run by really impressive people, because you've not got the numbers that you get from working in a big city like London. So you have to really be on top of your business to keep surviving, particularly in a time like we were having and have just had. And I know you're going to touch on that as we go through.
Yeah, and actually during the pandemic, in particular, when we were in lockdown, I think people really got to appreciate local businesses because they couldn't travel further afield. And now with the sort of advent of working from home and hybrid working being slightly more common than it used to be, people aren't migrating to London and further afield to work. They're actually able to live and work in their own communities. So yeah, we're lucky in
Yeah,
that
great.
respect.
So, Anne, can you tell me and our listeners a little bit about the FSB and what it does for small businesses?
Yeah, sure. So the FSB stands for the Federation of Small Businesses, and we are the UK's largest business support group. So we have around about 160,000 members across the UK, 4,000 here in Essex, actually. And they range all different shapes and sizes of small businesses and the self-employed. Now, I don't know if you know this yourself, having been a member, but we were actually founded back in 1974 by a small business owner called Norman Small, up in Blackpool, actually. And that's where our HQ is to this day. We've stayed true to our roots, and that's where our HQ is. But he basically disagreed with the introduction of the Class 4 national insurance contribution. So he wrote the Guardian newspaper and he lobbied the government with a group of other businesses to basically demonstrate how this was a real additional tax burden on his business. And that's how the FSB was born. Lobbying is still a very, very big part of what we do. I don't know if you heard recently, but the Chancellor actually name-checked us in the autumn statement because we lobbied very hard on the freezing of business rates, and that's something that we were recently successful on. So that is a big part of what we did and what we still do. So we are very much the voice of a small business. Government will constantly come to us to kind of sense check what's happening in the small business community, and why would they not? I think a recent report said that something like 99% of the business community is made up of SMEs. You know, they really are the beating heart of our economy. So, you know, it's really important that government help them and help them to survive and to thrive. Since we launched in 1974, I think we very much evolved from being a lobbying organisation into wider support for small businesses. So, as you know, we are a membership organisation, not for profit, and certainly apolitical. We do hold the government to account when needs be, but also we work very closely with them to make sure that small businesses are getting what they need in order to survive. We are very much led by our members and obviously run for our members. And we'll touch on a lot of the business services we offer later, but a lot of them are developed by our members themselves, them telling us what it is that they need in order to develop as a business. So the funding that we generate from our memberships allows us to provide a whole host of reports, toolkits, webinars, and networking sessions, all for free. Whether you're a member or a non-member, these resources are there for you for free because we want to help small businesses in general. So firstly, I wanted to highlight our Knowledge Hub. And on there, you'll find a whole host of toolkits on various topics, such as how to register a new business and the basics of marketing your business online. And also webinars and networking sessions, which are a really great way to connect with other businesses, but also to allow our members to kind of share their experiences with others and help them to grow. Greg, have you done any of our networking sessions by any chance? Have you been to any virtual or in-person events?
I'm not the best networker in the world, but I have been to a few. I've been to a few in Southend. I've been to a couple in Chelmsford. I haven't really done any since before COVID.
Yeah.
They were all before COVID. I've done one or two online ones, and I was the guest speaker at the Women Leaders event held in Chelmsford a couple of years ago. And that was a group of women entrepreneurs and local business leaders in the Essex branch, or East Anglia branch. Is it Essex or East Anglia?
It's Essex. We do have another development manager who covers Norfolk and Suffolk.
Yeah.
And I believe that's called East Anglia. Yeah.
Yeah. But it was probably the Essex one because it was in Chelmsford. And that was really good. I enjoyed that. But yeah, so not as many as I should do. I get the emails and I think, oh, that sounds really good, but then I'm doing something else that day, or I just, I'm not going out that day, or whatever it might be. So yeah, don't do as much as I should do, but the ones I've done have been good.
That's good to hear. And actually, our virtual networking sessions are probably more popular than our in-person networking sessions for the very reason you've just described, actually, that people are so busy today trying to run their small business to take a couple of hours out of their day to jump in the car, to travel, to go network, to come back again. They just can't afford that time when they're running a business, but also the cost of petrol. Whereas you can do it from the comfort of your own home, doesn't really cost anything. So our virtual networking is really, really popular, actually. The other part of what the Federation of Small Businesses does is the member services that we offer. And you touched on earlier that you yourself have used them. So I'll be interested to hear in a moment which ones you found most beneficial. But we literally have too many services to mention during this podcast session. It's quite impressive, the amount of benefits and services that we offer. And actually, our membership starts from £177 a year, which when you look at the raft of benefits on offer, that is extremely cost effective. The £177 a year, by the way, is if you have no employees, so if you're a sole trader. And that increases very slightly on a sliding scale, kind of depending on how many people you have working for you. But still, even if you have lots of people working for you, it can really be worth its weight in gold if you're able to tap into some of these benefits.
Yeah.
So I've only been in post 2 months, but there are 2 benefits that our members consistently keep telling me that they find really, really helpful. The first is our FSB Legal Hub, and the second is FSB Legal Protection. So the FSB Legal Hub, I'll touch on that one first. It's basically a portal which has over 1,000 templates for policies and letters on various topics such as employment, health and safety, tax, and data protection. And it's completely unlimited in terms of the amount of policies and letters that you can download. I was actually speaking to a member yesterday at an event, and he used our FSB Legal Hub to recover some debt. So he used our late payment calculator, and he used our template letter, sent that to the business that was not paying him, and it prompted payment. So happy days, it worked. He actually said to me that previously his very polite emails and calls just weren't working. But when that letter arrived on their desk and it had all the very serious legal spiel in it, I think it made them appreciate how serious he actually was and the potential implications. So they paid up. So yeah, it really does work. And actually, he joked to me, he said, sometimes I don't even need to send a letter. The very mere mention that I'm an FSB member seems to work. So even our name has that power sometimes.
Yeah.
And I guess it's nice, isn't it, to have a sense check of all the things you might need to cover off when you're trying to recover a debt. And you've got that kind of reassurance that everything you're putting in that letter is factually correct. I think back to myself and Martin's money tips. When I had to claim for unfair bank charges, he was my first port of call. It was all there in black and white, and all I had to do was insert my own details. So for small businesses who are so busy right now, it's really, really great for saving time and making sure that they're legally on it with all the language. Have you had any calls to dip into any of our kind of policies and letters at all, or our documents?
Yeah, I've used the letters a few times, particularly when I was first setting up the business.
Yeah.
And the templates for sort of standard documentation and so on, and sign-offs and website policies and things like that. And I found them really useful. And again, it was good having that sort of feeling, well, these have been written for businesses like me.
Yeah.
And forget what sector I'm in, it's a small business at the end of the day, and I don't have the resources to ask lawyers to draft everything for me. So being able to go into the hub, particularly the legal hub, and find what I need has been really useful. And I've also, not touch wood, not had to use them at all, but also the insurance side of things, the automatic insurance cover you get. Again, as a small business, particularly when you're starting off and you're not actually making anything at that time, you're just sort of trying to exist. Having some insurances in place through a membership of the FSB have been sort of give you a bit more opportunity to sleep at night in case something goes wrong. So I found them really useful as well. As I say, not to have used them, but just having the reassurance that they're there if I needed to use them.
Yeah, that's good to hear, actually. And some people may never need to use that particular service, but as you say, it's peace of mind, isn't it? And knowing that if you walked into a lawyer's firm, how much they might charge you to even pull up a seat, it's quite eye-watering. So the fact that you get this as part of your membership is good to hear. So underpinning the FSB Legal Hub, I think you alluded to it then, we have our FSB Legal Protection. So basically that offers members 24/7 legal advice and coverage of legal claims up to £10,000. And it covers issues such as criminal prosecution, employment tribunals, tax and VAT, data protection, and jury service. Now, jury service in particular, I was actually talking to a member last week about this. They found it particularly helpful because when running a small business, losing a member of staff for the week can have a really, really big impact. And, you know, I've never done jury service before, so I had no idea that you didn't get paid for it. But as an FSB member, it meant that we was able to claim back for loss of earnings. So that one in particular was really beneficial to him. There's a couple of other benefits that I literally just wanted to touch on, but I think they're really worthy of a mention. So we have on-demand health and safety training, professional PR advice, free business banking with the co-op, and discounted payroll service. But two in particular I really wanted to pull out, I think because I've got a particular interest in wellbeing at work and mental health, is FSB Care and FSB Perks. Now, as part of those services, we offer 24/7 telephone and online GP services, virtual physio, discounted health cash plans, and unlimited telephone counselling. And why I'm really proud that we're able to offer that kind of service is, you know, we're all facing a cost of living crisis at the moment. On top of that, small business owners are facing the cost of doing business crisis. And, you know, running a business on your own can sometimes be quite lonely. So I think it's really nice to know that the FSB has your back.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think, again, it's like I said earlier on, the insurance and things like being able to speak to someone and the health cover and things like that. They're just good to have, to know that if you ever needed them, they're there. And, you know, without this being a big sales push for the FSB, which why not anyway, for the price of membership, you know, if you did need to use even probably one of these benefits, you're well covering yourself.
Yeah.
For the price of membership. So yeah, I think even if you don't engage once you're a member, becoming a member has got so many benefits that you know, it's, as long as you can afford to pay the membership fee in the first place, which of course some businesses wouldn't be able to, but if you can, then it's certainly something I would recommend doing, to just give you that peace of mind as a business when you're trading, that, you know, lots of things can go wrong, and if they do, there is a fallback and some help there. But on that point, Anne, I will say that I do think something's missing. And I would say this, but there's no mediation or arbitration services included in the legal protection, which is something I would like to see maybe put in the future. Not just because it's my business, but because I've seen the effect of what can happen when someone has to go down the litigious route. They end up going through the courts, and whether they win or lose, they can actually find that themselves quite significantly out of pocket. And what mediation, and to a lesser extent arbitration, do is they actually make everything quicker and less expensive, and less chance that you're going to end up in a position that puts your business in front of in a public forum, basically, trying to resolve disputes. So I would like to see something there. I know it won't be this conversation that will sort of push that forward. There's a conversation to be had with the people in Blackpool, I would have thought. But at the end of the day, I do think that's something that will enhance membership even further, especially because we're about to enter a period, probably in the next 12 months, where mediation becomes mandatory for claims under £10,000. So again, it will fit in nicely there with the cover that's provided on the legal side.
Yeah, I mean, as I said earlier, we are run by our members for our members. And actually, if that is something you feel that could really add value to the FSB, I'm sure they would be very, very happy to open up a conversation with you. And actually, you said there about the benefits of ADR are saving time and money. And that's something that is really precious at the moment when running a small business.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, moving on. I'd be really interested to hear from you what you've found and what the FSB has found to be the most prominent issues in the last 12 months. There's a lot to choose from. There's the big three, which we alluded to in the opening. There's Brexit, the cost of living crisis, and obviously the effect of what's going on in Ukraine. So, from your side of the fence, what have been the most prominent issues you've been dealing with over the last 12 months?
So you're right, literally, where do I start? And do we even have enough time in this podcast to cover it all? So I'm actually sat here on a really cold day debating on whether to put the heating on or not. Rising energy costs is something that's affecting every single individual right now across the UK, and obviously behind every single SME is a business owner. So they're facing their own cost of living crisis. On top of this, particularly if they operate from a building or they're energy intensive, like a manufacturing firm, for example, they're facing massive increase in energy bills, even with the support that exists until April. So we did a report, I don't know if you read it, but it was called Out in the Cold, which came out in September. And it basically revealed that 96% of our members are concerned about rising energy costs. So that's all sectors. They're really, really concerned about energy and the impact it's going to have on their business. And what we're finding is that it's really hampering growth. Some of them are making that decision not to take on any more staff at the moment, even though they might need it, because actually they might need to save for energy bills come April. And I've even heard circumstances of people not paying themselves because they need to pay their energy bills. I'll give you an example, actually, which I think really highlights the kind of extent of the problem we're facing. There's a really lovely pub within our membership, and they were quoted an increase from £30,000 a year to £100,000 a year come April, once the energy support ends. And she said to me, for me, that's game over. Even if I released all of my staff, that's just not sustainable. And for me, that's really, really heartbreaking, because she survived COVID. She was able to get through the pandemic because she ploughed her own money into the pub, and she diversified and turned it into a community hub, giving back to the community. And now she's being absolutely hammered by energy costs. A lot of SMEs, they can't absorb these 3- or 4-fold increases in energy costs. So part of what the FSB is asking for is more clarity of what's going to happen past April once the support stops, because planning is quite critical to any business to help them survive. And at the moment, we literally can't plan past the 6-month point. We've also asked that the support is targeted based on the size of the business, rather than what's being rumoured is that it's going to be targeted on specific sectors like hospitality. So there's lots of lobbying we're doing with the government to try and improve the situation. But obviously, alongside this, there's also support that we're able to offer our members. So offering net zero advice, for example, and helping them to keep cash flowing by advising them on how to recover late payments. And actually, that seamlessly leads on to my other 2 points, which are actually challenges that our small businesses are facing across the sectors, no matter what industry they're in. Sorry, I'm just taking a sip of water because I realise I've been talking non-stop for about 5 minutes.
That's all right. While you've been talking, I've been sneaking a biscuit. So, a minute ago, you did say, I'll ask you for your opinion on that. And I thought, don't ask me right now because I'm mid-digestive biscuit.
Not a chocolate hobnob, I'm disappointed. Actually, when it comes to energy costs, what's your experience been? Or do you not operate from a building? Is it not so much of an issue for you?
It's an issue as an individual, because I'm sitting here freezing cold, and with currently paying for 2 kids to go to university.
Right.
They're nice and snug in their halls, while me and my wife are freezing at home. But that's life. So as a family, we are in a position where we're not putting the heating on and things like that. As a business, it does affect, because I work at home. So there are times when I'm sitting in my office and I am thinking, this is just ridiculous. It's so cold. And it feels cheaper. And I've done this a couple of times. Got in the car, driven to a local small business cafe, not a chain, up the high street, sat in there for a little bit, had a cup of coffee, and done my work in there. Which is something I've always done actually, anyway, because I think it's nice to get out and about. And I now know the owner of the cafe, and I'm a regular. They don't have to ask what I want when I walk in and all that sort of stuff, which is nice. But right now, actually, it's well, I'm nice and warm. I'm quite snug, and I'm probably spending a lot less money than if I was at home turning my heating on. So yeah, as an individual and as a family, it's affecting us more than, say, a business that's got to pay business energy. So as that's pretty much what I'd say from my own personal experience. But I do know other business people who are terrified by the potential rises and what it's going to mean. And one of the things they're worried about is they're going to have to put the prices up, and they don't want to, because they're already charging what they feel is a fair price. But now they're going to have to put the prices up so they can cover other things like increased energy prices. And then people won't go and buy coffee and sandwiches and takeaways or whatever off them because they'll be too expensive. Yeah. So they'll end up just not having the custom that they would have had if they didn't put the prices up. So it's a real vicious circle for anyone who finds themselves in that situation, I think. And, it's a big worry. I know even locally, every time a shop shuts down on Billericay High Street, it's like, oh God, another one's gone. And it's a lovely high street. It's got some great shops on it. But every day I go there, I think, oh, that's gone, or that's closing down. And I just hate to wonder what it could be like if all of the businesses there can't afford their energy bills, and that's why they're closing down. And just before I say, stop drinking your water, you can come back in, I think the other side of it is something you mentioned about the people who run that pub, is they've survived COVID, and COVID was really, really, really hard. I mean, for me, it was incredibly hard. I lost 70% of my income because a lot of my income depends on the travel industry. Because we run an arbitration scheme for travel disputes, but people weren't going on holiday. If people aren't going on holiday, they've not got disputes about the holidays, and therefore no work comes to us as at the end of the chain. And there were things like furlough and business grants and things like that that kept a lot of businesses going. And that just feels like a complete waste of money if people aren't going to get support a year down the line when they can't afford to pay their energy bills and keep the business going.
Yeah, it is quite a desperate situation. Actually, you touched on the number of businesses that are closing, and yes, we are unfortunately seeing businesses close as a result of not being able to pay their energy bills. And in some circumstances, businesses that have been operating for generations, and it's really sad because they are the identity of that town, and they're just giving up the fight. They just can't do it anymore. And I'm definitely going to take your advice there on your tip for keeping warm. I'm going to visit a lot more small business owners in the area and go pay for a coffee in their cafe instead of being at home. I really like that idea. But there's also a lot of business hubs and innovation centres around. There's a great one in Colchester run by Oxford Innovation, based at the University of Essex, and that's a fantastic place for businesses to go and work from. So there's lots of stuff on offer for definite.
Yeah, that's good. I think I've found there's a lack of that sort of thing in my area. So I know there's a couple of things around Southend, Chelmsford, Colchester. In the sort of Billericay and Basildon area, there's not really anything like that I've been able to find.
You'll have to hunt down more cafes to go and have coffee and cake in. So outside of energy costs, I think we're seeing two major issues across all sectors. The first being labour and skills, the second being late payments. So when it comes to labour and skills, we're in quite a unique situation at the moment, and there's apparently more vacancies than unemployed people at the moment. So there's a real squeeze on the labour market. We've actually just launched a new skills hub. It's on the front page of our website, and it offers recruitment and retention tips and how to engage with education providers. And why I think that latter part's quite important is that one trend we've seen is that businesses are now looking to engage with the talent pool at a younger and younger age, because there is such a squeeze on the labour market. So there's some great tips in there around apprenticeships and engaging with young people. You know, when it comes to recruitment of staff, unfortunately, a lot of SMEs can't compete with the higher wages of the bigger firms. And I'm going to give you an example. You'll need to sit down. There is a lawyer's firm that I'm aware of, and they increased their entry level salary from £50,000 to £150,000 a year to get people through the door. Now, firstly, I'm in the wrong job.
Yeah.
Secondly, I don't know how SMEs can compete with that. It's quite insane and probably not sustainable. But you know, it was poaching a lot of staff from the smaller businesses. On the plus side, I think that, you know, SMEs can recruit at speed, and they can offer the flexibility that maybe these larger companies can't do. So, for example, we have one member who's able to put a job on their website and then interview and offer within 24 hours. So they're really ahead of the curve when it comes to those larger, chunkier businesses that take weeks and weeks to interview and appoint someone. And also being able to offer flexibility, you know, the ability to work from home, for example. And I must admit, I'm incredibly lucky when it comes to the FSB. They're an absolutely fantastic organisation. They're really digital first, really big on well-being, and it's just a pure joy to work for them. It really is. And I think it's because they've learned from a lot of small businesses. They've looked at the best practice and what works, and they've applied it to them. So yeah, that is probably one of the biggest issues right now, is accessing people, but also the people they need with the right skills.
Yeah.
I'd say that the other issue is late payments. Now, when I say late payments, what I'm talking about is normally from the larger businesses to the smaller businesses. Not in all cases, but generally that's what we're seeing happening within our supply chains. And that's staggering, leading to the shutdown of 50,000 businesses a year because of late payments. So yeah, a huge amount, I think, needs to be done to address that issue. Unfortunately, it wasn't addressed by the Chancellor in the autumn statement recently. It's something that if it was addressed, it wouldn't cost the taxpayer anything. You know, he outlined a commitment to tackling tax. God, that's difficult to say. But he didn't mention anything about late payments. And yes, we do feel that's a very much missed opportunity.
Yeah, I think the thing about late payments as well, just to interrupt there, is as a mediator, I've mediated quite a few late payment cases, and they generally work. And basically what you have is the alternative is that a business goes out of business because it can't afford. So a late payment could be because one business can't afford to pay what it owes to the other business. So the other business takes the first business to court to enforce payment, but the payment isn't there. It doesn't exist. They've not got the money.
Yeah.
And it then just goes out of business and no one gets anything, and you know, potentially apart from the lawyers. When you go to mediation with those cases, you can come up with an agreed structure for those late payments to be paid. So it could be that party A, business A, owes business B £50,000, but they can't afford to pay them more than £1,000 a month. And at the beginning, that sounds ridiculous. That's going to take 50 months for that to be paid. But once you've had a conversation and you've had a mediator working with both parties to find a solution, they generally end in a settlement with an agreed payment plan that both parties can live with. So business A can continue to trade and generate more income so it can pay its bills. And party B although it wants all the money in one go, appreciates now and understands now that that's impossible because party A hasn't got the money and will instead take installments. And it works really well, and it's very cost effective. And again, I think it's something that businesses don't really know about, so they're not using it very often.
Yeah, and actually, I'm interested to hear from you with your experience of dealing with disputes. Sort of what percentage involves late payments? Because I'm going to talk a little bit later about a 2016 FSB report. And the amount of our members who are involved in a dispute involving late payment is shockingly high, actually. And I just wondered, are you seeing quite a large amount of your caseload being taken up by late payments? And has that increased actually in recent months with the economic climate?
I would say no, not at all. It's a very, very small amount. And it's certainly not increasing. Which is a real shame because it generally, mediation's got a success rate of around 70 to 80%, depending on who you speak to and how they classify a settlement. But let's say 70% to be err on the caution. 70% of cases will settle with an agreement between the parties at mediation that means they can continue to trade, maybe even trade together, and move forward. But they just don't know about this for one reason or another. And in late payment cases, I don't think I've ever had a late payment case that hasn't come to a settlement, because both parties, it's in their self-interest to find a settlement, because what they generally are, because one party can't afford to pay the other party, maybe because they've not been paid by somebody else further up the chain. But they want to continue trading. They want to continue, as I say, maybe trading with that company. They may be very important to them in their supply chain. So when you go to mediation, you help to repair the relationship, and you also help the parties to find a solution that means they can both move on and continue to trade. And it's one of those things, because people talk about late payments a lot. And I've read a lot in the FSB publications and things like that about late payments and what a major effect it has on business. And nobody seems to be aware of the power of mediation in resolving late payment disputes.
Yeah. Or maybe there's a task for us there.
Yeah.
To raise the awareness of the benefits.
Yeah.
It's a good point though, because a lot of small businesses don't know where to turn sometimes when they've got issues. And I think that's why, not trying to plug the FSB here, because there are lots of other business support organisations out there, but they can call us. And with just one phone call, they can be signposted in the right direction, because there is a wealth of information out there on offer, and it's very difficult to know where to start sometimes.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so I'd say that, the energy costs we touched on, the labour and skills shortages, the late payments, it's all leading to a bit of a perfect storm, really. And I think it's very much led to this plummet in business confidence we've seen in the last quarter from our small business index. And actually, small business owners at the moment are feeling more pessimistic than during lockdowns, which, considering that, entrepreneurs by their very nature are very dynamic and positive, I think that's quite a shocking thing to hear, actually, that they have that lack of business confidence. So the FSB is here to support those small businesses. Our strapline is supporting small businesses with their big ambitions. Unfortunately, at the moment, it is a case of helping them to survive. It really is quite a tough climate out there at the moment. And I'm very proud to work for someone like the FSB who can hopefully make some difference to our SMEs. Yeah.
And I think it's really important. And again, part of the idea of this podcast is to highlight what the FSB does, because, it's my podcast, so I can do that. We don't have to mention other ones because we're talking about the FSB, and I'm happy to do that. It's good to have someone like that fight in the corner. And what I like as well about the FSB is that we've got people like you in your role. You know, it's a national organization, but you can deal with it on a local level. And I think that's really important because you will understand the issues a business in Essex is facing better than someone who's sitting up in Blackpool. And, you know, to be able to have regional representatives who are on the pulse of what's going on in the area is actually really important, I think, and something that, again, is worth the subscription fee on top of everything else that we've already discussed as well.
Yeah.
And you can also put your logo on the website, the FSB logo on the website, which is quite useful as well. I think it's still something that people see as being a trusted organization. So, you know, if you're a member, you can carry the FSB logo and say that you're a member. And I think that's really useful as well in dealing with other small businesses in particular. Okay, you mentioned, Anne, about a report the FSB did in 2016 about disputes. I can't believe it's that long ago, to be honest. That's actually the year I set up this business, 2016. So it seems a lot longer ago than that. It seems, particularly after like 2 or 3 years, it seems a lot longer. So do you want to tell people a bit more about what that report was about?
Yeah, sure. I mean, when you asked me to come in and talk about ADI, I must admit I was absolutely mortified because I know nothing about it at all. I'm going to be completely honest. But I dug out some of your old podcasts to kind of get a feel for what's discussed, and I stumbled across one where you were talking about how you got into your very first job in this line of work, and apparently you didn't really know anything about it before that point. Your background is in something completely different, so that really put my mind at ease, actually, knowing that you were once in the same boat as me. So I did a little bit of research to kind of see what the FSB's involvement was in ADR. And yes, I came across this report from 2016, and we polled our members, and it came out that over 70% of our members reported being involved with at least one dispute. And of those disputes, 72% said it involved late or no payment, which is why I asked that question about late payments, because for me, that's quite a large percentage of those members who are having issues with disputes. And I think even more shockingly, what it revealed to me was that it cost SMEs 11.6 billion per year by having a dispute. And that equates to around about £18,000 a year on average for a small business, which for some, that is absolutely make or break. So yeah, it's very much an issue that needs addressing. As we've discussed, formal litigation can be expensive and time consuming, something that SMEs don't have a lot of time of. So yeah, anything we can do to help raise the awareness of what you do and the benefits of mediation for small business, I'm very happy to help.
Good, because I think that's really good to hear, because if you hadn't have said that, I maybe would have been saying, okay, well, look, that report was written in 2016. It's now 2022. So even with my awful maths, that's 6 years ago. What was done following the report, and you know, as a business that operates in the sphere that the report was about, and an FSB member, I've never seen anything since that report. So it was this big shock, you know, 11.6 billion a year, average cost to a small business of £18,000 if they've got a dispute. Talked about mediation and arbitration as hate the word, but alternatives to going to court, but then nothing was followed up. Now a lot happened, you know, we had the Scottish referendum, we had the Brexit, we've had COVID, we've got the war in Ukraine. So, you know, I'm not suggesting nothing has happened in the world in the meantime, but that report did highlight some really important things for small businesses, and nothing seems to have come out of it. So if nothing else, I'm glad we've established this relationship, and through me inviting you on the podcast. So maybe we can try and kickstart that discussion to see what comes next following that report, even though it's now 6 years old.
Time flies, doesn't it? I mean, that is one of the good things about the Federation of Small Businesses, is that they do make an impact when it comes to making necessary changes that small businesses need. So I'd be really keen to get someone from our policy team along to do your podcast and drill down specifically into this report and see what's been happening since this report and what they've done and what changes have been made.
That sounds really good. I think not just from me, but I think anyone who is listening to this who's got an interest more in the mediation arbitration side of things would be really interested to know from the policy side what the FSB is thinking there, especially since I mentioned earlier, which you might not be aware of, there are moves afoot at the moment to make mediation mandatory for claims under £10,000 as a starting point. So the timing could be quite useful again, because that potentially is going to come in next year. So that would be something I'm sure the FSB needs to be on top of, because it's civil and commercial claims under £10,000. So it will involve FSB members who will be mandated to go to mediation. So they need a lot more education about what mediation is. And, I would think the FSB as an organisation, as a body, has got an interest in making sure that if that happens, the mediation market is set up to provide it. And there are enough well-trained mediators. Anyone who provides the services is approved properly, is a business that can show that it can deliver those services fairly and impartially. And yeah, I think it'd be good timing all around for the FSB to pick that up and have a look at it. Okay.
It's been a really, really useful conversation, actually. I've really appreciated your time, and I know a lot more about mediation and arbitration now. So I know what I'm discussing over dinner tonight with my partner to make me look intelligent.
Look, Anne, before you go, final question, or two in a way, away from work. What's you sort of, a bit of personal information, what's your main thing that you do to relax or spend time with your family or something like that when you're not working?
Well, I did a very cliche thing of during the pandemic, I went and got a camper van. So me and my partner quite often tour around Essex and Suffolk in our camper van, in the middle of a forest or at the side of a river, and it's so peaceful, just connecting with nature. And there's a lot of depressing news out there at the moment, and also that we're all experiencing day to day with the cost of living and doing business crisis. So it's nice to get away from it all, even if it's just for a day or so, to go out in the camper van and do a bit of wild camping.
I'll have to get some tips off you for where to maybe stay around Essex, because although I've lived here now for more than half my life, I still only really know sort of my bit of Essex. I don't really know sort of further out, sort of, I suppose, the borders of Hertfordshire and Suffolk and so on.
Well, the good thing about working for the FSB is that we have so many interesting small businesses, and actually we have one who's a wildlife photographer and goes wild camping quite a lot. So he's given me lots of hints and tips for some really unique places. So I've had a revelation working for the FSB. I've been connected with some very unique and quirky businesses. So it's been incredible.
Good, quirky's good. And a final question then, is there anything you wish I'd asked you but I haven't?
I've never been asked that question in my life when I've done a podcast or a media interview. Good question.
It doesn't mean I'll answer it.
No, I think I'm all done on the questions, to be fair. That took a lot of prep for me. Being new at the FSB was actually good for me, because I really got to speak to our members in depth about the benefits we offer and which ones they find particularly useful and what kind of challenges they're facing at the moment. So it's been useful in that respect. But no, I think I'm done on the questions.
Good. I can breathe a sigh of relief. And can you give listeners an easy way to contact you if they want to contact you?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the first port of call is going to be the FSB website. Within that, there are regional pages, and we have one for the East of England, so you'll find my contact details on there. Or you can follow us on Twitter, and I know you're going to ask me the handle now. I'm going to have to get my phone out and have a look because I can't remember it for the life of me. At FSB Essex, so you can get all the latest news and updates on there, and you can contact us through there as well.
And obviously, if someone's listening who's not in Essex, there'll be an equivalent. They'd probably just put a Google search in for their area and
we've got development managers all across the UK, and actually we have a band of really, really dedicated volunteers. We've got 3 in Essex, and they're small business owners themselves, so they really understand the issues that you're facing, and they volunteer a lot of their time to the FSB. They probably put more hours than me, and to be fair, they're so dedicated. And some of them have been around for 20, 22 years, so they really know their stuff. So excellent. Yeah, there's lots of us all across the UK.
Brilliant. And sorry, just for one final point of clarification, that's England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It is, yes. Yeah,
brilliant. Thank you. Great. Well, thanks to Anne and Scott for being my guests today. And I'll see you next time on There's No Disputing That. Thank you for listening to No Disputing That. Please subscribe to hear more from experts in the field. If you'd like to suggest any future areas for discussion or to appear on the show yourself, you can follow us on Twitter at No Disputing That and send us a DM. Finally, if you need a mediator, give my management team at Arbitra International a call on 020 7936 7070 or email info@arbitra.co.uk. See you next time on No Disputing That.